The old space station floated in silence, circling a dying sun. Its metal walls were rusty, its lights flickered like tired stars. Most of the station's people had left years ago, searching for better worlds. But one man had stayed behind. His name was Elias, an engineer who believed machines still had secrets worth saving. Elias was not young, but not yet old. His hair carried silver threads of age, and his hands were covered with scars from years of work. Day after day, he repaired broken engines, tested old systems, and walked through empty halls that once echoed with life. To him, silence was normal, until one night the silence broke. It started as a distant crash. A deep metallic sound shook the floor under his boots. Elias froze. His eyes moved to the ceiling as if he could see through the steel walls. Another crash followed, louder this time, coming from the docking bay. No ship was scheduled to arrive. No traveler had passed through this station in months. Slowly, Elias grabbed a small plasma torch from his table. It was not a weapon, but it was all he had. He walked through the corridor, each step echoing in the empty hall. The docking bay door hissed open. Inside, smoke curled through the air. A small craft, battered and torn, rested against the wall as if it had barely survived space. Sparks danced from its broken wings, then he heard it. A sound that was not mechanical. It was a sharp gasp, a struggle for air. Elias's heart raced. He stepped closer and saw movement inside the craft. There, curled on the floor, lay a child. But not a human child. Its skin was pale blue, glowing faintly under the broken lights. Its eyes were too large, shining like liquid silver. Thin ridges ran across its chest, opening and closing weakly as though the creature was fighting to breathe. Each breath came harder than the last. Elias dropped the torch. He rushed forward, kneeling beside the small body. "Easy, easy now," he whispered, though he knew the child could not understand his words. The alien's tiny hands clawed at its throat, desperate for air. Elias's mind raced. He had seen many species in his life, but this one was rare, one that breathed gases poisonous to humans. Without the right atmosphere, the child's lungs were shutting down. He pulled off his jacket, wrapping the small body gently. Its skin was cold, trembling. Elias lifted it and carried it out of the smoke-filled craft. The alien's glowing eyes looked up at him, wide with fear, then half-closed in weakness. For the first time in years, Elias felt something more than duty. He felt fear, not for himself, but for this child who might die in his arms. He laid the alien on his workbench and searched desperately through his tools. He had nothing made for this. No medical pod, no life support systems. Only scraps of old machines, broken air filters, and his own mind. The child gasped again, weaker than before. Its chest glowed faintly, but the light was fading. Elias clenched his fists. He could walk away. He could tell himself it was impossible. But his heart would not let him. He leaned closer, speaking softly. "I don't know who you are. I don't know where you came from. But you're not going to die, not here. Not tonight." The alien's silver eyes flickered. For a moment, Elias thought it understood. Then he noticed something strange. On the child's arm, just below the skin, a mark glowed faintly, a pattern of light like ancient writing. It pulsed slowly, as if alive. Elias frowned. He had never seen anything like it. He reached out, but the child's body shivered as if the mark reacted to his touch. Then it dimmed, almost fading away. Elias pulled back, his mind full of questions. What was this child? Why was it alone? And why did it carry this strange mark? The station groaned under the weight of silence again, but Elias no longer felt alone. Somewhere, far out in the galaxy, someone would be looking for this child. Maybe enemies, maybe hunters. He looked down at the small body, fighting for every breath. His heart made the choice before his brain could argue. "I will save you," he whispered. He did not yet know how, but in that moment Elias bound his fate to the alien child, and in the cold silence of the station, destiny had just begun to stir. The child lay on the workbench, breathing weakly through its glowing chest ridges. Elias paced back and forth, his hands trembling. Every breath the alien took sounded like broken glass. Time was running out. Machines were his world. He knew engines, circuits, filters, and alloys. But this was life itself slipping away. He had no guide, no medical pod, no alien manual, only instinct. Elias stopped and stared at the shelves of scrap around him. Broken helmets, shattered oxygen tanks, melted regulators, all useless for a human. But maybe, just maybe, a new design could be born from the junk, he whispered to himself. If lungs are broken, then I will build new ones. The idea sounded insane even to his own ears. Building lungs for a species he had never studied? Impossible. Yet the child coughed again, its tiny body shaking. Impossible or not, he had no choice. He began to gather parts, an old filtration core from a mining suit, a damaged fuel converter, and thin wires stripped from communication boards. His hands worked fast, but his mind worked faster. He drew diagrams on the floor with chalk, crossing them out again and again. The alien child's glowing eyes followed him, weak but aware. Elias could feel them watching, as if silently asking, "Will you save me?" For a moment, doubt clawed at him. What if he failed? What if this experiment killed the child faster? What if someone out there was already searching for it and he was wasting time? But then he remembered the look in those eyes when he whispered, "I will save you." That promise was now heavier than the stars themselves. He worked for hours. Sparks flashed as he cut metal. Steam hissed from pipes, wires hissed like snakes across the table. He built not with certainty but with hope. Every piece was a gamble. Still, problems rose. The lungs needed a power source, but one stable enough for fragile tissue. They needed filters fine enough to separate gases invisible to the human eye. And above all, they had to be light enough for the child's small frame. At one point, Elias slammed his fist onto the table. The design collapsed in front of him. "It won't work," he muttered. His voice echoed through the empty hall. "I'm building a coffin, not a cure." Then a sound broke the silence. A faint, soft hum. Elias turned. The glowing mark on the child's arm had begun to pulse again, faster than before. The rhythm almost matched the beat of a heart. Elias leaned closer, curiosity sparking through his despair. The mark was not just light, it was energy. "Is this your power source?" he whispered. The child did not answer, but the hum grew louder, sinking with its shallow breaths. Elias realized the mark might help power the artificial lungs. Perhaps this child's very body wanted to survive and was offering him the key. His hands shook as he redrew the design. He rerouted circuits, adjusted regulators, and connected wires in ways no manual would allow. He built a casing from polished alloy, curved and smooth, almost like ribs. The device looked less like a machine and more like something alive. As he worked, memories surfaced. His younger days when he built his first engine. The thrill of creating something from nothing. That same fire now burned again, but this time it was not about machines. It was about life. Hours later, sweat ran down his face. His back ached, his fingers bled from sharp wires. But the device was ready. 2 small glowing chambers connected by thin tubes, shaped like delicate lungs. He lifted the device carefully, as if holding the heart of a star. The child's breathing had nearly stopped now. Elias's own heart pounded like a hammer. He whispered, "Hold on. Just hold on." With slow, precise movements, he placed the artificial lungs against the child's chest. The glowing mark on the arm pulsed brighter, almost as if recognizing the device. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, with a sudden gasp, the chambers filled with light. Strange, invisible air flowed through the tubes. The child's chest rose, then fell, then rose again, stronger this time. Its silver eyes snapped open, wide with shock. Elias almost fell to his knees. He laughed, half in relief, half in disbelief. "It works. By the stars, it works." The child coughed once, then took another breath, steadier than before. The glow in its chest ridges returned, stronger than ever. Elias sat back, exhausted, staring at his creation. Against all odds, against all reason, he had built artificial lungs for an alien child. But deep inside, a new fear stirred. He knew this kind of technology was not simple. It was not ordinary. If others discovered what he had done, they would not see it as kindness. They would see it as a violation, a crime against rules written long before he was born. And somewhere, across the stars, those rules were already moving closer. For now, the child slept, breathing easily at last. Elias whispered to himself, "You're safe, at least for tonight." But in the quiet corners of his mind, a darker voice answered, "Safe. For now, but not for long." The child slept peacefully on the workbench, its chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the glowing artificial lungs. For the first time since it had crashed into his station, Elias felt relief. But the relief was thin, like paper that could tear at any moment. He knew this was not the end. The lungs worked now, but they were fragile, built from scrap and desperate invention. One wrong spark, one sudden failure, and the child's life would fade again. Elias leaned back in his chair, staring at the strange design. It pulsed faintly, connected to the glowing mark on the alien's arm. The hum of life filled the room, softer than a whisper, yet powerful enough to remind him of the weight of his promise. But promises were heavy. Elias had lived long enough to understand machines never stayed perfect. They needed fuel, maintenance, and protection, and this device he had built was unlike anything in his entire career. It was alive in a way, bonded to the child's very being. He did not know how long it would last. As dawn, if one could call it dawn on a space station, spread a dim glow through the dusty windows, Elias rose again. His mind would not rest. If he wanted the child to survive, he needed to rebuild the lungs properly, not just as a desperate fix, but as something permanent. He cleared his workbench, setting out tools with a surgeon's care. This was no longer patchwork. This was creation. The workshop awakens. The station's silence broke as the engineer worked. Sparks danced across metal sheets. The low hum of cutters and the hiss of welding filled the air. The corridors that once felt like tombs now pulsed with energy. Elias stripped down old starship fuel lines, bending them into curved shapes that mimicked ribs. He melted alloy into thin sheets and carved them into chambers smoother and lighter than his first design. Every piece had to be perfect because this was no ordinary machine. It was a lifeline. He tested air filters again and again, building layers fine enough to separate invisible gases. Each failure sent a cloud of smoke into the air, but each failure taught him more. His hands ached, his fingers burned, but he did not stop. The child woke once, its silver eyes blinking in the workshop's light. Elias turned and smiled. "Don't worry," he said softly. "Sleep. I'm building something better for you." The child tilted its head as if listening, then closed its eyes again, trusting him completely. That trust burned in Elias's chest like fire. The breakthrough days passed without Elias noticing. He lived between sparks and shadows, feeding only on stale bread and water, surviving on determination. Then came the moment. He fitted the final piece into the casing, a crystal core salvaged from the old navigation system. When he set it in place, the entire frame pulsed with a soft glow, almost alive. The device no longer looked like scrap. It looked like a gift from another world. Sleek, silver and curved, the artificial lungs glimmered with an energy that felt both mechanical and organic. Elias held it up, his hands trembling. He whispered to the silent room, This will last." But as he admired the creation, a thought struck him like a blade. If he, a simple engineer, could build this with scraps, then what would others do with such power? Armies could be created, soldiers who never tired, never suffocated. It was not just a medical miracle. It was a weapon waiting to be abused. He shook the thought away, focusing again on the child. This was not about armies. This was about life. The bond when Elias attached the upgraded lungs to the child, the reaction was immediate. The glowing mark on its arm flared like a star, brighter than ever before. The device hummed in harmony, syncing with the child's body as if they had always belonged together. The child sat up, stronger now, breathing deeply. It touched the casing of the new lungs, its small fingers tracing the polished metal. Then it looked at Elias, and for the first time it smiled. Elias felt a lump in his throat. He had lived so long with silence, with machines that never smiled back. But this was life smiling at him. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you?" The child tilted its head, confused, but the smile remained. The shadows beyond. That night, as Elias rested for the first time in days, the station's long-range scanners blinked awake. A faint signal passed through, so faint it almost went unnoticed. It was not a distress call. It was a trace, a silent pulse traveling across the stars. Elias never saw it, but somewhere far away someone did. The signal carried more than location. It carried truth. The lost child had survived, and truth has a way of drawing hunters. Elias slept with the peace of a man who had kept his promise. The child breathed beside him, alive and safe. But beyond the stars, 4 shadows began to move, their course already set for the lonely station. The build was complete. The danger had only just begun. The space station had never felt alive before. For years, its empty halls echoed only with Elias's footsteps, the hum of old machines and the silence of forgotten days. But now laughter echoed where silence once ruled. The alien child was changing. With the new artificial lungs, its breaths were steady, strong, and almost musical. It no longer lay weak on the workbench but moved with quiet curiosity, exploring the station's dusty corners. Elias watched as the child touched the walls with wide silver eyes, fascinated even by rusted pipes and broken panels. Every small discovery filled it with wonder. And for the first time in a long time, Elias felt wonder too. A teacher. Again one evening, as the station circled its dying sun, Elias sat with the child in the control room. Stars burned outside the cracked windows, distant and cold. He pointed at them, speaking slowly. "That one," he said, raising a finger to a bright cluster. "We used to call it Orion's belt, a hunter among the stars." The child tilted its head, repeating softly in a strange accent, "Ion," Elias chuckled. "Close enough." He began teaching simple words: sun, ship, home. The child listened with patience, repeating each sound, sometimes clumsy, sometimes perfect. It learned faster than any human child Elias had ever known. And then, unexpectedly, the child pointed at Elias and said one clear word: "Father." Elias froze. His throat tightened. He had never been called that before, not by anyone. He looked at the child, whose silver eyes shone with trust, and for a moment, the lonely engineer felt less alone. Simple joys. The days became gentler. Elias shared old music files, and the child listened with wide eyes as soft notes filled the workshop. Sometimes it clapped along, laughing, though it never got the rhythm right. At meals, Elias would offer bread, and the child would wrinkle its nose. But when he found dried fruit in storage, the child's face lit up as if it had discovered treasure. Elias laughed more in those days than he had in decades. Together, they even repaired parts of the station. Elias guided the child's hands, teaching it how to tighten bolts, how to hold tools, how to listen for the voice of a machine. The child seemed to understand more than words. It understood patience, and it understood Elias's heart. The station, once a graveyard, now felt like a home. The nightmares, but peace never comes without shadows. At night, the child often woke suddenly, its silver eyes glowing in the dark. It would clutch its chest, trembling as if remembering something terrible. Once Elias found it crying softly, a sound unlike any human tears, like glass breaking under water. When he touched its shoulder, the child whispered one word in its strange tongue. He did not understand the language, but the fear in the sound pierced him. The glowing mark on the child's arm always pulsed brighter during these nightmares. Elias began to notice patterns in the light, like ancient signals he couldn't read. It was as if the child carried memories carved into its skin. He wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but the child could not explain. Instead, he only held it close, whispering, "You're safe. You're safe with me." Yet, in his heart, Elias knew safety was only an illusion. The signal unseen far beyond his knowledge, the signal from the lungs, had traveled across space. It had reached ears that did not forgive, eyes that never closed. But here, inside the station, there was no sound of ships, no alarm of danger. Only the quiet hum of life. The child began to draw strange shapes on the dusty floor with a piece of chalk Elias had given. Circles, lines, and patterns Elias could not recognize. When he asked, the child only smiled, as if the drawings were secrets it could not yet share. Elias watched the symbols, unease crawling in his stomach. They felt less like games and more like warnings. A quiet storm one evening, after a long day of repairs, Elias sat in the workshop with the child curled beside him. The dying sun painted the room in red light. For a moment, everything felt eternal. The child placed its small hand over the casing of the artificial lungs, then over Elias's chest. It tilted its head as if comparing the rhythms of two hearts. Elias smiled weakly. "Not so different, are we?" The child answered only with a soft laugh, leaning against him. Elias closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the moment drown his worry. But somewhere deep inside, the old engineer felt it, the storm gathering. Peace could not last forever. He had seen too much of the galaxy to believe in gentle endings, the whisper of danger. That night, Elias dreamed of shadows moving among the stars. He saw armored figures walking through fire, their weapons glowing, their voices like thunder. And in the dream, they were not hunting armies. They were hunting the child. He woke with sweat on his brow, his chest heavy. He looked at the child sleeping peacefully beside him and whispered, "I don't know who you are, but someone out there does. And they're coming." The station drifted silently through the dark. Inside, an engineer and a child shared simple joys, unaware of the vast storm closing in on them. The calm had come, but soon the storm would arrive. The station floated in the quiet dark, circling its tired sun. Inside, Elias slept lightly, as he always did. Years of loneliness had trained him to wake at the smallest sound, the faintest change in rhythm. That night, it was not sound, but silence that woke him. The hum of the station's scanners had stopped. Elias sat up quickly, his eyes darting to the control panel. The screens flickered with static, then cleared. His chest tightened. 4 red signals glowed on the radar. Large, fast, coming straight for him. The first shadow Elias rushed to the viewing port. Beyond the broken glass, he saw them. 4 enormous ships sliding into orbit. Their hulls were black as night, etched with glowing lines that pulsed like veins of fire. They moved in perfect formation, silent, merciless, like predators circling prey. His stomach dropped. These were not traders, not explorers, not friends, he whispered almost to himself. Enforcers. Every engineer, every drifter, every outlaw in the galaxy knew the tales. The Galactic enforcers were not police, not soldiers. They were judgment given form. When they arrived, it meant one thing. Someone had broken a law so sacred that the stars themselves seemed to tremble. Elias's eyes darted to the child sleeping in the corner, its chest glowing faintly with each breath. He didn't need a message to understand. The enforcers had not come for him. They had come for the child. The landing. The ground shook as the first ship locked onto the station. Docking clamps screamed, metal against metal. Dust fell from the ceiling. The child awoke with a start, silver eyes wide with fear. It clutched its chest, the glowing mark on its arm flaring brighter than ever before. Elias ran to it, kneeling down. "Stay behind me," he said quickly. His voice trembled, but his hands were steady. The docking bay doors groaned open. 4 figures stepped through the smoke. They were taller than men, their armor black and smooth, each plate glowing with lines of red light. Their faces were hidden behind masks shaped like skulls, eyes burning with cold fire. Each carried a weapon longer than Elias's arm, humming with restrained power. They walked in silence, their boots heavy against the steel floor, until they stood in the heart of the station. The leader raised a hand and the others stopped. Then a voice deep and metallic filled the room. "Where is the stolen child?" The stand Elias's breath caught in his throat. He forced himself to stand, placing his body between the child and the enforcers. His voice cracked at first, but then grew strong. "This child is not stolen. It was dying. I saved it." The leader tilted his head, mask gleaming under the dim lights. "You built lungs for it. You changed what was written. I gave it life," Elias shot back. "That is no crime." The leader's voice dropped lower, like thunder before a storm. "It is the greatest crime. You have broken the law of destiny. The child was meant to die." The word struck Elias harder than any weapon. He shook his head fiercely. "No life is meant to die. Not while I can prevent it." For a long, heavy moment, the enforcers did not move. Their glowing weapons hummed, casting sharp red light across the walls. Elias's heart pounded. Behind him, the child pressed against his legs, trembling but silent. The clash of wills. Finally, the leader lowered his weapon. Only slightly. His burning eyes fixed on Elias. "You are a mechanic, a man of broken steel and rust. Do you think you can stand against the will of the galaxy?" Elias swallowed hard, but his gaze did not break. "I don't know about the galaxy. I only know about promises, and I promised this child I would keep it safe." A low sound spread among the enforcers. It was not laughter. It was colder, darker, like stone cracking under pressure. The leader raised his hand again, and all 4 weapons snapped to life, glowing brighter. "Then you will fall with it." The spark of defiance Elias's mind raced. He had no army, no fleet, no allies. But he had something, the station itself. For years he had rebuilt its defenses, hidden traps and shields in case raiders ever came. He never thought he would use them against enforcers, but now he had no choice. His hand moved slowly toward a panel on the wall. His voice was calm, but his heart roared in his chest. "You're not taking the child," he said. The leader's mask tilted, reading his defiance. A pause. Then the room shook as the enforcers stepped forward, their weapons raised. Elias slammed his hand onto the panel. The station roared awake, walls opening, hidden turrets rising, energy shields crackling to life. Lights blazed, alarms screamed. The silence of years was gone, replaced with the sound of war. The moment before, the child's glowing mark pulsed wildly, brighter than ever, as if its very body knew what was coming. The enforcers tightened their grip on their weapons. Elias stood firm, his back to the child, his eyes locked on the four armored giants. The air was heavy, buzzing with power, thick with fear and courage alike. The leader's voice cut through the chaos, cold and final. Then you have chosen death, and in that instant, the calm was gone forever. The station groaned like a waking beast. Lights blazed to full power. Turrets unfolded from hidden panels and shields sparked blue across the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling as ancient engines hummed back to life. The four enforcers did not flinch. They stood tall in their black armor, glowing lines burning red, weapons raised. Their leader tilted his skull-shaped mask toward Elias, voice rumbling like distant thunder. You are clever, engineer, but cleverness cannot stop fate. Elias's chest pounded, but his hands were steady on the control panel. He forced his voice to stay calm. Fate doesn't live here anymore. Not while I stand. The clash begins with a simple gesture. The leader signaled his soldiers forward. The air cracked as their weapons lit up, humming with deadly energy. Elias slammed another switch. The station's turrets came alive, spitting beams of light that cut through the smoky air. The enforcers raised shields of crimson energy, the beams sparking harmlessly against them. The floor shook as the two sides clashed. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and shadows danced across the walls. Elias pulled the child behind him, shouting, "Stay low!" The child's silver eyes glowed brighter, its mark pulsing like a heartbeat out of control. One enforcer stepped closer, weapon raised. Elias ducked, throwing a blast charge he had kept under his bench for years. The explosion shook the bay, knocking the giant back into the wall. For a moment, Elias dared to hope. But the enforcer rose again, armor scorched yet unbroken. The leader's voice cut through the smoke. You cannot win, human. You fight with scraps. We are the hand of order. The child's light, then it happened. The child, no longer hiding, stepped forward. Its small frame shook, but its eyes glowed like molten silver. The mark on its arm burned brighter than ever, flooding the room with strange light. The enforcers froze. Their weapons wavered. The leader growled, voice cracking for the first time. The mark has awakened. Elias looked from the child to the enforcers, confusion filling his mind. What is it? What does it mean? The leader's reply was sharp, heavy with truth. That child is not yours to protect. It is a key, a spark that was meant to die. By saving it, you have undone centuries of balance. The words hit Elias like a blow. But when the child reached out and grabbed his hand, trembling yet unafraid, the choice became clear. Balance or not, this was a life worth saving. The engineer's defiance. Elias straightened, his voice loud enough to echo across the bay. You call yourself enforcers of law, but law without mercy is nothing. This child breathes because I refuse to watch it die. If that makes me a criminal, then I will wear the name proudly. The enforcers tightened their weapons again, anger rising. But still they did not fire. The mark's glow seemed to chain their hands as if even they feared its light. The leader stepped closer, towering over Elias. You do not understand. This child's survival will bring fire to the stars. Wars, uprisings. The galaxy will bleed because of what you have done. Elias met the glowing eyes of the mask, his own voice steady. Then let it bleed. Better a galaxy that fights for life than one that kills children for law. The tension breaks. The silence after his words was sharper than any blade. The enforcer's armor hissed with power, weapons humming, turrets glowing. The child's mark pulsing like a beacon. Elias stood in the center of it all, a lone man with nothing but steel walls and a promise. Finally, the leader lowered his weapon only slightly. His voice was cold, unreadable. You are a fool, but a fool with courage. He turned his mask toward the child. The silver glow reflected off his armor, burning like a star against the black. This is not finished, he said, stepping back. We will return, and when we do, the galaxy itself will decide your fate. The enforcers moved in unison, retreating toward the docking bay. Their massive ships pulled away, vanishing into the endless dark. After the storm, The silence that followed was heavy, almost crushing. Elias leaned against the wall, sweat dripping down his brow. His knees shook, but he forced himself to stay standing. The child looked up at him, eyes wide, as if asking silently what would come next. Elias knelt down, placing a hand on its shoulder. His voice was soft, tired, but full of resolve. They may come back. They may bring the whole galaxy with them, but as long as I breathe, you are not alone. The child pressed its glowing mark against his hand. For a brief moment, Elias felt warmth spread through his chest, like the rhythm of two hearts beating together. The war had not yet begun, but in that moment, Elias knew he would fight it, even if he stood alone against the stars. The station drifted in silence once more. The thunder of battle had passed, leaving only the hum of old engines and the faint glow of lights. Yet the air still felt heavy, as if the shadows of the enforcers lingered even after their ships had gone. Elias sat in the control room, his hands trembling from exhaustion. The child rested beside him, breathing steady through the artificial lungs, its silver eyes calm but thoughtful. For hours neither spoke, but silence is never the end. It is only the pause before truth arrives. The weight of questions, Elias stared out the cracked viewing port at the endless stars. His mind refused to settle. The words of the enforcers echoed in him like poison. The child is a key, a spark that was meant to die. What did they mean? Why would the galaxy's strongest warriors chase a single small child? And why had the mark on its arm made even the enforcers hesitate? At last, Elias turned to the child. I don't know if you can understand me, he said softly on him, but I need to know. Who are you? The child tilted its head. Slowly, it raised its glowing arm and pressed the mark against the control panel. At once, the station's screens flickered. Symbols ancient and burning spread across the glass, circles within circles, stars in flames, a language older than any Elias had studied. The child's eyes glowed brighter, and a soft voice, strange yet clear, spoke for the first time in words he could understand. I am last. The hidden truth, Elias froze. Last of what? The child touched the mark again. More symbols filled the screen, this time shifting into images. A palace of crystal towers shining across a world of blue seas. Crowds of beings with silver eyes bowing as a young figure raised its hand. Then fire. Armies marching. Towers falling. The sky filled with ships of black metal. The image ended with a single child, this child running through smoke and fire, carried into the stars. Elias's throat tightened. You are a prince. Or a ruler. The child shook its head, eyes shimmering with tears. Not ruler. Heir, last heir. The truth struck Elias harder than any blow. The child was not only rare, it was the only one left of a royal line, a bloodline that could command loyalty across worlds. That was why the enforcers wanted it dead. Its survival meant rebellion, a spark that could set the galaxy on fire. The engineer's choice. Elias leaned back, rubbing his hands over his tired face. He had thought he was saving a life, but he had done more. He had saved a legacy powerful enough to change the fate of countless worlds. His mind raced with fear. If the enforcers returned, they would bring an army. They would stop at nothing. But when he looked at the child, trembling yet brave, he felt no regret. I don't care who you were meant to be, he said firmly. You are alive. That is enough. The child reached out, touching his scarred hand with its small fingers. In that touch was trust deeper than blood or destiny. The oath that night, Elias worked again, but not on machines. He turned off the lights, lit a small flame, and sat across from the child. He placed his hand over his heart. I am only an engineer. I am no soldier, no king, but I swear this, I will stand beside you. If the galaxy wants to kill you, it will have to come through me first. The child mirrored him, placing its glowing hand over its chest. In its soft, halting voice, it whispered, Together. The word echoed in the quiet room like a promise. The whisper of the stars' days passed, but peace no longer felt safe. Elias repaired the station's defenses, knowing they were not enough. He sent no messages, knowing signals could betray them. He slept little, waiting for shadows to return. Yet in the quiet moments, he found something he had never known before. Family. The child's laughter filled the halls. Its small hands worked clumsily with tools. Its silver eyes looked at him with trust. The station was no longer only steel and dust. It was alive, but the stars beyond were restless. One night, Elias woke to the sound of the scanners. A new signal had arrived, larger than before, stronger, closer. He stared at the screen, his chest heavy. The enforcers were coming back. Not 4 this time. Many. He looked at the sleeping child and whispered, "So it begins." The revelation, as the ships drew closer, the child stirred, its mark blazing brighter than ever. Elias shielded his eyes from the light. When it dimmed, he saw not just fear in the child's face, but determination. The child spoke clearly, stronger now. Not alone. Never alone. In that moment, Elias understood. He had thought he was the one protecting the child. But perhaps when the storm truly broke, it would be the child who protected him. And maybe the galaxy itself. The enforcers believed destiny had been broken. But Elias now saw the truth. Destiny had only just begun. The station trembled as enemy ships drew near. Elias placed his hand on the child's shoulder, steady and unshaken. "Then let's show them," he said quietly. "Let's show them life is stronger than law." And as the dark fleet descended, the lonely engineer and the last heir of a fallen world stood together, 2 sparks against the endless night, ready to ignite a fire that might one day burn across the stars.